the proposition have been asked to expound on how water vapor is the main greenhouse gas, because it's not. And the opposition have been asked if we should slow down on population growth in order to curb global warming. We'll have them respond to those questions. Third proposer, you have 3 minutes.
I believe we've all heard about Google. And if you use Google to research, and you do your research really well, I'm pretty sure you'll find out that water vapor is actually the main greenhouse gas. So you should go and research better and then ask another question. As for my worthy opponents, one of them said that volcanoes greatly impact on climate change. Now I'd like to ask, how many times do volcanoes erupt in the world, worldwide? How many times do volcanoes erupt, like for example, in 1 year? We've had maybe of only one volcano erupting per year. That does not contribute greatly to climate change. Now, I fully concur with the motion, and I claim that energy production is indeed the main contributor to climate change. Now, my colleagues have talked about non-renewable sources of energy, energy production from non-renewable sources like coal, fossil fuels. Let me now delve into energy production from renewable sources. My first example is hydroelectric power. So hydroelectric power is thought to be a cleaner way of producing energy than either coal or fossil fuels. Yet hydroelectric power is produced mainly from tropic reservoirs, which contain a very high content of organic matter in them. Adding on this, the reservoirs are wide and shallow, hence they expose a very large surface area to emission of methane gas into the atmosphere. Now, according to our blog, that is the Issues of India, methane, the impact of methane on climate change equals that of carbon dioxide on climate change. So you can see how serious that is. Thus, four Brazilian dams in the Amazon in the year 2011 on 15th of December they made an impact on climate change that equaled the impact any normal coal power plant would make around the world. So you can see that it's not only the non-renewable sources of energy that, when used in energy production, really affect our climate. The renewable sources of energy affect the climate as well. And another example is geothermal power production. And we look in specific at the open loop method of producing geothermal power. Now, the open loop method is actually considered one of the cleanest methods of producing power geothermally. But still, while using the open loop method, the major emissions that are given out to the atmosphere when using this method are methane and carbon dioxide. So it still pollutes the environment, it still coats our Earth's upper atmosphere with these greenhouse gases which cause global warming. It can therefore clearly be seen that energy production is indeed the dominant contributor to climate change, because we've looked at renewable resources, non-renewable resources, using all of them to produce energy. Using all of them to produce energy, we have clearly seen that the impact on our climate is really adverse. Thank you. Anita Monajuma from the NAIVASHA Girls.
Opposition, you have 3 minutes to respond.
It's not prudent to swallow bold-faced lies, hook, line, and sinker. A patriot of this nation, Amwaria Rangigi, standing strongly from Bahati Girls, standing very firmly without fear of contradiction to oppose this motion that states energy production is the dominant contributor to climate change. Allow me to begin by very accurately responding to the question posed to me by the beautiful lady. Actually, countries are taking measures to reduce population rates because it's not only contributing to high levels of carbon dioxide, it's also proving to be quite expensive to sustain. I think we should take measures to step down population, hence the rise in use of contraceptives. Now, in addition to my fellow opposers' points, I'm going to look into, first, aerosols. These are tiny, light particles in the atmosphere. They occur naturally from erupting volcanoes, wildfires, etc. Now, in comparison to the 83% of carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, aerosols make up to 90% of the atmosphere. Now, if you're as good in math as I tend to believe, you must know that 90% is way higher than 83%. According to the Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change, in 2015, quote unquote, the effect of aerosols on cloud formation is the largest source of uncertainty in present-day climate models. Aerosols determine how much snowfall the Arctic gets and keeps. Secondly, let's talk about laughing gas, alias known as nitrous oxide. Now, according to GRIST report on April 10th, 2010, fertilizers used in farming are the leading producers of this poisonous gas that is 300 times more potent as a greenhouse gas. Agriculture is the breast milk of the economy of this country. Now, pretty much every part of this country, agriculture is being practiced. Day in, day out, fertilizers are applied to farms in this country. This laughing gas is no laughing matter. So farmers cry due to lack of rain, and yet they're the reason behind it. Irony. Moving on to the third point, meat industries. Did you know that the cattle the Maasais keep, that the cattle my grandfather keeps, contribute to poisonous gases in the atmosphere that lead to greenhouse effect, that lead to global warming? That's right, the cattle you see roaming around. Livestock produce up to 9% of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, 65% of nitrous oxide in the atmosphere, 37% of methane in the atmosphere. I don't know about you, but from where I'm standing, these numbers are extremely scary. Many thanks.
Proposers will have your final statement. You have a minute.
So I'll start by mentioning what my friend here is telling me, that apparently if really the world is trying to reduce on population, then what they're doing is not working, because 80 million people are being born every year and 53 million people are dying. That definitely means that the population is increasing annually. Okay, now in conclusion, we have seen that not only renewable sources of energy, but non-renewable sources of energy have negative effect on climate change. So I will refer to Margaret A. Ogola's River and the Source, in which the main character, Akoko, tells her daughter, Nyabera, that if you are walking down a path and you discover that it is leading nowhere, then it is only prudent to seek another way. Now, my friend will help me to get something that will show the other way. We are suggesting the passionate, the serious. We mean going at it aggressively. And what we are suggesting is that we pursue with all our hearts the 7th Sustainable Development Goal that states we need affordable and clean energy. So yes, that is our suggestion, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Opposition, you have a minute as well.
I can draw a rectangle with 3 lines. Seems impossible, right? But I can do it. Let me tell you how. Because I refuse to be a captive of inside-the-box thinking. Energy production is a contributor to climate change, but is it the dominant contributor to climate change? In existence are many factors that play an even bigger role, so that what my beautiful friends are saying here loses credit. Many measures upon measures are being taken to control pollution due to activities of energy production. But let me tell you what you cannot curb. You cannot curb the high levels of aerosols in the atmosphere that are generated by that perfume some of you are wearing. You cannot curb the volcanic gases that are generated by the eruption of, among many, Mount Etna. You cannot curb the levels of nitrous oxide in the atmosphere because, come on, Kenyans, we are agriculturists. So these factors contribute to even greater levels the climate change today. In opposing what my friends are saying here. Oh, and about that box, that rectangle, in case you're curious, come see me after this. I'll show you how. Thank you.
All of you are good. Is that okay? That's clear. So based on that then, I won't go to the details because all of you, with regards to the style, mastery, passion, mastery of topic, and coherency of argument, that was excellently done. And so based on that, we had to look at certain things about emotional engagement, where you now tell us now, how does this now touch to our lives? I love the tackling of questions. Excellent. I actually love the response on carbon dioxide and water vapor. I think that was powerful. All of you are great. So let's just wait for the results, but get to know that where the difference was in the emotional engagement. All the best.
NAIVASHA Girls High School, you have 73%. Please give them a round of applause. It's a fantastic score. Bahati Girls have 74%, making them the winners.
Well, congratulations to the two teams on stage for these wonderful and high scores. We'd also like to thank you, members of the audience, and also our viewers back home for watching. Please keep it tuned on KBC Channel 1. Engage us on social media at Great Debaters EA. I have been your host, Austin Nyombo.
And I am Mariam Bishar. We'll see you next time.
Production of energy being the dominant contributor. So who believes here that it is the dominant contributor? Anyone?
We researched heavily, and according to the research we did, only 19.1% is not about energy. So the rest of that, all the other greenhouse gas emitters are related to energy. So yeah, that's what I believe.
Okay, Bahati girls, I believe you are not for that. Yeah? What is your main argument point?
Our main argument point is that there are other very many factors that are, most of the time, they are undermined. We tend to look at energy production because it's, okay, everyone uses energy actually. So we tend to look at it because it's highlighted or something. But then there are so many other factors that are simple, easy, and they are very, very small, like the use of perfumes to, generate aerosols. But then we tend to undermine them.
Let's talk about now the real thing about affordable and clean energy as an SDG goal, yeah? What do you think is one thing we should always do to ensure our energy is clean and affordable?
I think it's about time the Kenyan government decided to curb corruption, because our main problem as a country is actually corruption. Without corruption, we would have actually been a first world country by now. And if we decide to stop this, the oil we're getting from Turkana and all the other minerals could be shared out equally.
The Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.
Still on the vein of the SDGs, welcome to the Great Debaters Contest, Nakuru edition. I am your host, Austin Nyombo.
And I am Mariam Bishar. Today it's an all-ladies battle with NAIVASHA Girls going versus Bahati Girls Secondary School, and they're debating on whether energy production is the main contributor to climate change. We'll have the ladies take the stage and wow us now. Proposal number 1, you have 3 minutes.
Cindy Tracy from the NAIVASHA Girls, here to be a protagonist of the motion that states energy production is the dominant contributor to climate change. Climate change simply is the rise in the average surface temperature on the Earth. Imagine driving, Judge Minor, or being in a car, and the car in front of you releases a huge cloud of smoke. How do you feel? It is not interesting at all. So according to takepart.com, climate change is primarily caused due to the human use of fossil fuels, which releases carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So what these greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide do is that they trap a layer of heat within the atmosphere, bringing about massive effects on the ecosystem, like rising sea levels and unpredictable weather patterns, etc. Energy production sector, as described by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, simply comprises all energy extraction, conversion, storage, transmission, and distribution processes. We are not saying that energy production is the only contributor to climate change. All we are saying is that it is the main contributor to climate change. According to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the following sectors made the following percentages of greenhouse gas emissions in 2015. First was electricity with 29%. Approximately 67% of electricity which is used in America comes from burning fossil fuels. Burning fossil fuels releases carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the environment, making the earth really, really warm. Transportation comes in second with 27%, and it is also primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels for cars, trucks, trains, etc. And over 90% of the fuel used for transportation is actually petroleum-based. So imagine how much petroleum, how do we make this petroleum? How much coal is burned to get this petroleum? Third is industries with 21%, and industries burn fossil fuels for energy. And as they burn the fossil fuels, they emit these greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, and all these other gases into the environment, and we already know the effect right now. Fourth, we have land use and fertility coming in at 11.8%, then agriculture at 9%. Look at this. Burning too much fuel causes climate change, right? Drinking too much alcohol causes drunkenness, also right. So to sober up, you have to stop drinking. So to stop climate change, we have to stop burning fossil fuels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bahati girls, you have 3 minutes for your opening statement.
You see, you can't dress a sheep in wolf's clothing and expect it to act like a wolf. It will still bleed for Pete's sake. It will act like a sheep because it is a sheep. This is what I'm talking about. I'm saying, yes, energy is a factor. In this case, it is the sheep, but it's not the wolf. It is not the dominant factor. I, Fauf Mangej from Bahati Girls Secondary School, strongly oppose this motion. To my brief but precise definition of terms. Energy production. This is the process of manufacturing large amounts of energy. Dominant is something which is more important, noticeable, and even powerful than others. Contributor. This is something that helps cause another thing, climate change. This is the variation of weather patterns over a short period of time. Now, climate change is a reality, and it's been taking place, so here are the evidences. I'm talking about severe Category 5 hurricanes, like Hurricane Katrina, which took place in New Orleans in 2007. I'm talking about high and rising temperatures, making 2015 the hottest year ever recorded in the world's history. I'm talking about frequent droughts, like the California's 2015 drought and the drought that we have been experiencing in Africa. All this is climate change, my friends, and I can assure you it is not caused only by energy production as a main factor. So, for starters, let's talk about population growth. This is simply the increase in population. So you see, when population grows and people become many, a lot of things happen. Let's take, for example, a report by the United Nations Populations Fund. They say that the population has increased from 1.6 to 6.1 billion from the 20th century. You can imagine how many people are in the universe right now. Not even the universe, just let's take the Earth, for example. There's so many people. So when people increase, when the population increases, definitely we'll want to have more products, definitely we want to have more food. What does this lead to? This leads to an industrial growth. And industrial development has increased by 12% over the past 100 years. I am guessing, you are also guessing that, oh God, how many industries do we have in the world right now? Many, right? So when we have so many industries, there's something alarming to that. This is because a research carried out by Physicians for Social Responsibility stated that
Since the beginning of Industrial Revolution, which was in the 17th century, mind you, all industries in the world have been producing 25% of carbon dioxide per year. Per year, my friends, per year. And it's still estimated to grow to 35%. You can imagine the rise in carbon dioxide levels. When this happens, there is increase in temperatures. And when there is increase in temperatures, drastic changes in climate will take place. I'm talking about melting of 134 million metric tons of the Antarctic, which led to rise in sea levels. Tell me, my friend, was that only caused by energy production? No, it was caused by the rise in population. Thanks.
Time for rebuttals now. NAIVASHA girls, you have 3 minutes.
Representing NAIVASHA Girls Secondary School, I am Grace Zawadi, proposing the motion that states, energy production is the dominant contributor to climate change. So I'll start by refuting points that have been presented by my worthy opponents. She mentioned that energy production is not the dominant contributor to climate change. Well, I think the first proposer clearly stated that only 11.8% of CO2 emissions or carbon dioxide emissions to the atmosphere that are caused by land use and fertility, that is the only part of pollution that is not caused by energy production, so that has already been taken care of. And then hurricanes are due to natural reasons. And industries are all about energy production, that is why they're able to make products in the first place. Okay, now I shall move on to my first point. I imagined they would mention something about water vapor being the main greenhouse gas in the atmosphere today. So I wonder why water vapor is now acting against us. Well, it is because when we burn fossil fuels, they release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide forms a thick blanket over the earth that absorbs heat from the sun and makes the atmosphere abnormally hot. So for this reason, there is evaporation from large water bodies, for example, oceans, lakes, seas, etc. So water vapor rises into the atmosphere and it causes, ordinarily, it will disperse into space. But because of this thick blanket, it gets trapped there. Why is there so much CO2 in the atmosphere? Definitely because of energy production. Energy production results in the excessive emission of CO2 gas. So I shall take a case study of coal. Coal is a very interesting source of energy because from its mining to its preparation, to its transportation, its combustion, its waste storage, all of that is detrimental to the environment. It is the most used source of energy in the world today since the Industrial Revolution, because, for example, in the US, 56% of their electricity comes from the burning of coal, and as a result, a third of their CO2 emissions is attributed to coal-fired power plants. So where does this CO2 come from? When coal mines are abandoned, because of the heat and the pressure underground, they burn up, and so hence releasing carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide finds its way into the atmosphere is equals to climate change, and so forth and so on. An average coal plant will produce 3.7 million tons of carbon dioxide, and someone is trying to tell me that energy production does not result in climate change. I think with this we have successfully convinced you that it is energy production. Thank you.
Bahati girls, you have 3 minutes for your rebuttal.
So over the holiday, I was talking to a friend of mine and I was telling her that I am a writer. I said, no, Judy, you cannot be a writer because you're an extrovert. Now I told her, listen, Ivy, you do not have to be an introvert to be a writer. All you need to have is the art of observation. The rest is just myth. Now let me tell you another myth, that energy production is the dominant contributor to climate change. Let me correct my opponents. You said that fossil fuels is the main contributor to carbon dioxide, and actually you said major contributor to carbon dioxide levels in the body, in the environment rather. Let me show you an illustration. That was production of carbon dioxide. Grace Zawadi
Grace Zawadi said that hurricanes are developed naturally. Now, Veronica, who is going to be the third opposer, actually does geography. And she's told me that hurricanes rather develop from the high level of humidity in the atmosphere, and therefore the humidity stores enough energy for the hurricane production. Now, tell me, how is that natural? On to my point. See, their argument is based on subjectivity. Journey with me in objectivity. Let's talk about volcanoes. God, even the mention of volcanoes is scaring me. I'm trembling because of volcanoes. Tell you what, during a volcano eruption, something called the volcano ejector is released. Now, this volcano ejector consists of carbon 4 oxide, sulfur 4 oxide, and the volcano ash. Now, we'll major on carbon 4 oxide and sulfur 4 oxide as the components changing the climate. Carbon 4 oxide is the second most potent greenhouse gases. Now, it is one of the heat-trapping gases which traps the heat and therefore leading to an increase in temperature and therefore global warming. Ladies and gentlemen, global warming is climate change. Sulfur 4 oxide combines with oxygen and water molecules in the air to produce sulfuric acid, aerosols. And on the point of aerosols, I think the third opposer will expound on that. And therefore, let us move into my citations. Mount Etna, one of the most active volcanoes in the world, based in Europe, erupted in 11th of April 2017. Now, while the report about the effect of this volcano has not been told yet, the previous volcano eruption of Mount Etna, which is barely a year before that, was reported in this, according to New York Times of December 14th, to have released 1.3 million tons of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now tell me, compare this to their fossil fuel burning resulting in carbon dioxide. How is this even comparable? Ladies and gentlemen, volcano eruption is beyond burning of fossil fuels. Let's talk about deforestation. Ringing a bell of the Mau deforestation? Aha, thought so. Now, according to Daniel Howard of the United Nations of Food Agriculture, he said that deforestation contributes up to 25% of the global emissions of carbon dioxide. 25%, which transmits into 1.6 million tons of carbon dioxide in the environment. I leave with this question. You see, one committee was able to lie to 40 million plus Kenyans that the translation of "Oh God of all creation" is Mungu nguvu yetu. Let us not be deceived again. It is not funny. Judy Wanjiro, Bahati Girls.